Hey guys, this is Kevin Cam with Precision Powerlifting Systems. I'm joined in the new, bigger JBF Studios with Jay Birdie. So today, I'm going to start having a little bit more direction with these videos. So one of the things that I've been working on for, I say the last year, but this has been a culmination of being just part of sports for over 30 years, is I've come up with a individual process for each individual of PPS to achieve greatness. And these are things that they each have to do individually on their own. So the pyramid that I'm going to discuss today, it's not the only part of training. Like, of course, as a coach, like I'm monitoring their programs, I'm guiding that process, I'm helping them make decisions, I'm doing those things. My job as a coach I'm doing, but they're responsible for certain aspects of their results. Like at the end of the day, you get the total that you earn. And what we see a lot is you'll see somebody do a meet and they have all these excuses, this went wrong, I'm blaming the program, I'm blaming the coach. Ultimately, you are responsible for the total that you get. And you get the total that you earned, whether it's good or bad. And what you need to do under those circumstances is, if it's not what you expected, you need to figure it out. But there needs to be a process of figuring it out. And that needs to be laid out by the coach. Now, when I was coming up with this idea, so obviously like once COVID had hit and everything's moving online, right? So like I don't coach in person anymore. It's been over a year since I've been in a gym setting, coaching a ton of hours like that in person. So trying to kind of decide on what direction I wanted to take things in. So it's very easy to try to want the first idea that I think comes to a coach's mind is, I'm just going to start throwing these programs together, charging $50 a month and seeing how many people want them, type of thing, and trying to get more like quantity of business. But at the end of the day, so what's funny is Alyssa had asked me what I'm actually passionate about in just like some random conversation. It wasn't even like a deep conversation that we were having. And I was like, well, I've always liked the skill acquisition stuff, but like upon further reflection, it's like, I've always been obsessed with like high performance. Like watching a Tom Brady play a sport or something like that has always been something that's been important to me, like something that I've always been interested in. And then I started to think more and more about my life growing up, like how important sports was for me. And not everybody had the opportunity to play sports at a high level. So, playing soccer, which is literally the world's most competitive sport, and being able to do that in college and on these more advanced club teams and stuff like that, like there were a lot of sports for me started in the beginning as an outlet to get away from physical and verbal abuse that I was suffering at home. But it became so much more than that. It didn't just let me get out of that. It gave me the skills and the values necessary in order to be successful later on in life. So no matter what adversity that I've ever encountered, those values that sports instilled in me is why I'm standing here today as a full-time powerlifting coach. When I think of how many people on the internet, that's what they want to do. And like I kind of just fell into this, and I fell into it, but with the work ethic and the consistency and the focus and the discipline that sports had taught me along the way. And as I'm going like deeper and deeper into this, and I'm thinking like, what do I really, like what's my overreaching vision? Like what do I really want for Precision Powerlifting Systems, and where do I want this to go in the future? And one of the things, and I've said this a lot about powerlifting, is it's kind of a unique sport where you can get some dweeb like Jay Birdie over here competing on the same platform as a world champion, right? So like powerlifting offers an opportunity to everybody to get those gifts of sport, right? It doesn't, like to play a sport at the college level requires a certain amount of talent plus all of those other things, right? And not everybody is afforded those opportunities. But powerlifting is the one sport where you can literally compete on big stages and you can get the gifts of sport later in life. Like for me, I started powerlifting at 32 years old.
So old.
And I coach a lot of people who start in their mid to late 20s. How old were you when you started?
20, just turned 27.
Yeah, so like 27, 28 years old. That's probably the average age of the group that I coach when they start. So it offers those opportunities. But in order for them to develop those traits and those skills, And to actually get the gifts of sport, there has to be a plan laid out. And so for me to lay out this plan, it took quite a bit of like really thinking and reflecting. And for me, it's not just like having high success. It's not the external outcome of what you achieve in the sport, right? It's based off of your given abilities and your given circumstances. Are you achieving the best level that you could possibly achieve? And then I started thinking like, well, sports is probably why I did so well in school in the first place. And the more that I started thinking about it, I was like, high performance and what I was doing in sports, that's a lifestyle. So I started coming up with these ideas of what it meant to be a high performer. And so based off of like my life, not just in sports, but just in general, like overcoming adversity and all of those things. My life in sports, what I've heard other high performers talk about in interviews, what I've read in like research and books about high performance, and I kind of put everything together. And what you end up realizing is all of it blends together and starts like working itself out when you just think of, I'd ask myself, so when I was starting to come up with the base of the pyramid, so I like listed out values like in this very like brainstorming kind of idea. And when I was thinking of like, what are the things that people need the most in order to survive in this sport, right? Because most people only last 3 to 5 years. They don't last more than that. And in order to actually achieve high performance, it takes a long time. It takes more than 3 to 5 years. And I know when I'm saying high performance that a lot of people are thinking about like how much weight's on the bar and stuff like that. That doesn't matter. There's plenty of people who lift a lot of weight that are absolute fucking assholes in real life. And I would not consider them high performers. So in order to actually achieve that and actually to be rewarded with the gifts of sport, it takes a long time. And like, let's be real. If the NFL decided to completely quit playing football and to become a powerlifting federation, the top 1% of this sport would change very, very fucking quickly. So the people who think they're high performers in the sport of powerlifting, it's a niche sport that not a lot of people do. So in order to actually achieve high performance, it takes a long period of time. And that's why like an NFL player, they have the foundation to build high performance in anything that they do. And I've done a previous video where I've explained my definition of high performance. It's on the YouTube channel, so you should watch that. So I started thinking about all the issues that I've had with like lifters in the past and the problems that they had actually like realizing their abilities. I honestly believe with 100% of my being that every single person has that greatness inside of them. And I've given this analogy before, like we all start on a baseline somewhere, and it's like, if you have these certain traits, take a step forward. And as I go through questions, like people are getting further to the end point than other people, and some people will still be stuck on that starting line. Like we all might have a different distance to travel to get to that point, but we all have the ability to get to that point. So I do 100% firmly believe that we have that ability in us. So how do we get there? So the things that I decided make up the base of my pyramid. So these are the foundational aspects that are more important than any, like you can't build anything. You can't start building towards greatness without this foundation. So I settled on 5 key points: resiliency, integrity, mindfulness, student, and effort. Okay, so when you look at this, there's nothing about technique, there's nothing about work capacity. We haven't even got into the physical pieces of training yet beyond just having effort, and I'm going to explain what effort actually means. So resiliency. So this is an objective sport, and it's a sport a lot of people start later in life without experiences of actually failing at things before, and understanding that failing becomes an opportunity to learn to get better. So resiliency is the ability to withstand what could be viewed as negative outcomes, but viewing them as a positive opportunity to learn. And without that grit and without that resiliency, you're just not going to stick with this sport long enough. And I'll do a video that kind of explains each one in greater detail, but there's going to come a time where you get hurt, your performance isn't what you expect, and things happen where life might get a little busy at times, or stress outside of life might get a little bit higher at times, but you need the resiliency to be able to face adversity and be able to learn from mistakes so that you can continually progress to get better. That's literally makes up a cornerstone of the pyramid for a reason. That's actually in a spot, and it has a purpose in the spot. Integrity is next. So integrity is being honest to yourself. So in a lot of cases, what you have, and being accountable to yourself. So I think in a lot of cases, when I've had lifters in the past, it's something doesn't go their way, and it's like, what do you think you need? Well, I need this in my program. When they really aren't being honest with themselves. Like, have you done everything in your power to get the best performance that you could have got at that moment in time? Have you been honest with yourself about your recovery, about your RPEs, about the weights on the bar, about your focus and attention in training? Are you scrolling through Instagram when you're training? It's having that integrity of being honest with yourself. And without being honest, you can't have a good conversation with a coach. Because if you're like, oh no, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, and you're blaming the program, it's never going to work. It doesn't matter who's coaching you or what program you run. That baseline honesty to yourself and to your coach and everybody else, of course, is an important factor here. Mindfulness makes up the middle of the bottom of the pyramid. This I put here specifically as well. Mindfulness is it's being aware and being in the present moment, being right where your feet are, judgment free. This is an extremely hard concept to understand and an extremely hard concept to learn and to actually become good at. But mindfulness makes up the middle of the foundation of this pyramid for a reason. I was listening to an interview with Keith Powers, and he's the director of high performance for Malaysia, that country. And he had said the thing that separates the elite athletes from the non-elite athletes is self-awareness. So when you develop this self-awareness that you know when your mind's wandering somewhere else and you're able to quickly bring it back and you do it judgment-free, we have two minds. We have our emotional mind and our thinking mind. The emotional mind is irrational. It doesn't make good decisions and it doesn't lead to high performance. Our thinking mind is rational. It allows us to make the best decisions at that current moment in time. And when we're self-aware and we're present in that moment, we are making the best decision. And when we do that judgment-free, we're able to react and respond appropriately to whatever obstacle is coming in our way. So that self-awareness is probably the most critical aspect of individual performance, that if you don't have it, you're never going to get to where you could possibly go. So self-awareness, mindfulness. And when I say mindfulness too, it's not necessarily just meditation is how you work on mindfulness. That's one way. Guided meditation, like on a Calm app or something, is one way. But there's other where, you need to be mindful as much as possible throughout your day. If you're driving your car, be in the moment. Feel your hands on the steering wheel. Like really lock in your vision and pay attention to the road and other people on the road and try to execute driving to the highest of your abilities. When you're having a conversation with somebody, be in the conversation. Like be present in that moment. Be listening. Don't be thinking about what you're saying next, because that's living in the future. Don't think about what you said previously. That's living in the past. Be in the moment, really listening and really taking it all in. You can work on mindfulness at all points throughout the day. So I was reading one of John Wooden's books, and he was talking about the first thing that he did with his UCLA teams was teach them how to put their socks on. So what he wanted was, he didn't want them to get blisters that would affect their thinking and distract them and end up affecting their performance. But I think this goes further than just that. Like if you're that type of person who comes in wearing two different socks, you're not mindful in being in the moment when you're getting dressed in the morning, right? So I think a simple task of just paying attention to that, it's a way to work on mindfulness. It's a way to be present in the current moment. But it's more than that, because you need to be judgment free. So in terms of like training, what you see a lot of times is somebody will, let's say we're doing a max effort lift, and they're like, well, in the past I've hit this number before, so I'm going to put this number on the bar, right? They're living in the past. They're not present in the moment and thinking about how the reps felt, what they look like, what's actually happening in that current moment. And then let's say they do that and they miss the rep, and then they're frustrated and they get upset. Now they're living in the future because they're predicting these future outcomes that are going to be negative. At no point in that training process were they present in the now. And the only place that you can actually improve performance is now. You can't go back in time. You can't fast forward time. The only place that you can improve performance is now. And you have to be self-aware and be present in the now and be right where your feet are in order to get stronger. So I think when you really think about it, that this is the only time that actually exists right now, that being present in that now is literally it's the center of the foundation of the pyramid for a reason, and it's very hard to develop, but that self-awareness goes far beyond just lifting weights. So the next one's student. So this is just having, I think labeling yourself as a student, it creates this environment that you're learning. And that's what training is, it's learning. So if you approach it from having that perspective of being a learner, of being a student, when you make mistakes, you know that those mistakes are learning opportunities. And that I think it helps cultivate a passion for the sport itself, right? So you want to learn about the history and so like one of the things that, like there are exercises I throw in at times and I'll be like, hey, Bob Hoffman was the one who came up with these isometric exercises. Paul Anderson came up with these deadlifts. And I'll give a little history lesson about where these exercises came from. Like you should want to learn about the sport and fully immerse yourself as, I want to learn about programming, I want to learn about technique, I want to learn about all these different aspects of the sport. But the program itself can cultivate all of these things too. I'll get into the effort point in a second. So when I construct a program, training needs to have consequences. You need to fail in order to succeed. You literally cannot get better if you don't fail. There's this period of 3 to 5 years where, yeah, you get these beginner gains and it's great and everything goes well. But at some point, training has to have enough consequences and it needs to challenge you, and this is where effort comes in. Because effort's not just showing up and giving it your all. Effort means you're going to challenge yourself slightly beyond your skill set. And when you challenge yourself slightly beyond your current skill set, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. And when that happens, you're going to fail at times. But if you have a student mentality, you understand that failing is a learning opportunity to actually get better, and that it's a necessary component of high performance. Failing is literally necessary in order to succeed. You cannot succeed at the highest level if you never fail. And it's for those reasons, like it literally, like neurochemically and stuff, it sets the stage to actually learn and get better. But it's because you need to challenge yourself. You need to step outside your comfort zone. And if you're a person who really struggles to step outside your comfort zone, you need to do it every single day. It's not just in the gym. So if you're having a work meeting and you're uncomfortable saying something, speaking your mind at a meeting when you know it's important, do it. Step outside of your comfort zone and do it. If you have a hard time public speaking, talk to a stranger for 5 minutes. There's literally things that you can do to step outside of your comfort zone every single day, and you got to seize that opportunity. And over time, you earn the right to do difficult. And confidence isn't something that's just, you can just talk yourself into. You need to do these foundational pieces to earn the right to do difficult, to build confidence, and ultimately to build poise under pressure and greatness at the top of the ladder. So that's the foundational layer. So then the first level, after we've really worked on those individual aspects, we have work capacity, technique, intent, and baseline focus. So now there's certain physiological features that need to be present earlier on, right? If we're trying to build skill. So you got to have enough endurance and work capacity in order to actually do enough work, because repetitions are necessary to get better. Technique. I think if you ask any old school lifter what the most important aspect of training is, a lot of them will say technique. And of course, coming from Shaco being my first coach, technique was always really pushed on me as the most important aspect of training. So building a baseline level of technique, really important, right? And those are pretty self-explanatory. Intent is the next step up from effort. So now when you have intent, there's just this attention and this enthusiasm to really want to get after training. So you have the laser focus comes later on, but like you have these goals set up, what you want to do, and then you have these baseline goals that you know what you need to do each day when you go into the gym, and now every rep has a purpose behind it. And you understand that it has a purpose behind it, and you're putting that intention into the attention that you're giving each repetition. So it's this added little boost. It's not just showing up and challenging yourself, but it's actually having this enthusiasm behind it to want to get better. And baseline focus, this is you've developed baseline self-awareness in the foundation. right? So focus, having baseline focus, is being aware in training and constantly being able to pull your mind back in. It may wander all over the place pretty consistently still at this point, but you have the ability to be aware of it and pull it back in. So as your mind wanders, you're aware, you pull it back in, judgment free. You're not getting as upset when things don't go well. You're not getting as excited when things go really well. You're staying kind of judgment free in training, but you're still easily distracted, but you're starting to develop the tools of being able to bring yourself back to the current moment. Once you start doing these and you start training this well, this is where stuff starts to kind of just, as you get higher up in this pyramid, stuff just happens. You can't train these things. You need to develop these, and then the top levels emerge. Okay, so these are your trainable aspects, the first two levels. And when you train them well enough and consistently enough, and you apply enough effort, and you continuously stress your skill set, the emergent skills of these start to come up. So the top, so we'll call it the second layer. Skill, confidence, consistent focus. So when you start building work capacity, technique, you have intent behind repetitions, you're able to be self-aware in training, pull yourself back in, and you're judgment-free, being present in the current moment. You're constantly learning, and you've been learning for a long period of time. You're honest with yourself. You've handled adversity. When things don't go well, you've learned from those mistakes. This is where we start to see skill emerge. So now, when people look at you, this is where some people will start looking up to you as a lifter. Your numbers are starting to come up, your technique looks pretty good. You're really not shaken by your max effort lifts or days in the gym. You're kind of almost like a machine at this point when you're going into training. And when you do this consistently, this is where confidence begins to emerge. Because you're aware, you understand what's going on in the process. You're current in the moment. You're not getting upset. You're not getting too excited. You're more in control of what's happening between your ears, and some confidence starts to emerge. You're not afraid to fail because you don't look at failure as a negative. You look at it as a learning opportunity. So you're more excited. You have more intention in training. You're more excited to actually stress your skill set a little bit more each day and each day. And that actually excites you. The process itself is where you find fun and meaning in, not the weight on the bar. And that's where confidence starts to come in. And because you've been training all of those aspects for a while, now your focus is more locked in. So you started with your mindfulness training, your effort, your intention, the self-awareness of bringing yourself back to the current moment. And now because you've done that so much, it becomes easier. Now you're just locked in training sessions. You have consistent focus. You're not easily distracted. You don't have the negative thinking to pull you out of that positive mindset. Your self-talk is always positive. You don't have to convince yourself that you're capable of doing things. It's almost just this inner feeling that you just know you're capable of doing it. You're not scared to fail because you know you've put your best effort before you. So every training day you've given your all. You're not afraid to miss because you've earned the right to be defeated. And you just know what you're capable of. And it's this freeing feeling when you're no longer scared of things and you just believe in your own power. And then the more you do that, that's when we develop poise under pressure. So basically, poise under pressure, that's your ability to maintain being yourself under any circumstance. So you're not being fake, right? So I think a good example of this is when people get nervous and they get scared because they want to hit a PR at a competition or whatever it may be. They huff more ammonia, they take more pre-workout, they listen to heavier music all the time. Poise under pressure means you're literally who you are as an individual under any circumstance. It doesn't matter whether you're traveling at nationals, whether it's a local meet, whether it's in the gym, you're always yourself. And that starts with integrity. So if you're always honest with yourself and you're building your self-awareness, right? That mindfulness, you're building that self-awareness, you're learning, and you understand that failure is a learning opportunity, that it's not a negative, and when you've failed, you've used it as a learning opportunity, and you've developed your grit and your resiliency, and you show up all of the time challenging yourself with that effort that then became intention, that then started, your self-awareness started allowing you to bring yourself back and not be easily distracted. And then now your focus is getting stronger and stronger because you're actually training it in the gym each time. And now confidence and skill are emerging. And then all of a sudden, when you do that long enough, you're who you are all the time. It doesn't matter the circumstances, you rise to the occasion. And you get excited about those opportunities to rise to the occasion. And at that point, you tend to see people become leaders. So they keep that student mentality, and that's with them forever. But what they start to do is they start to help out the others. They start to teach them about the process, and they start to lead by example. Like, this is how you get to this point. And once you become a teacher like that and you start giving back, and it's genuine and it's authentic, and you know, you're giving back to the sport, you're giving back to the people in your team, and people are looking up to you, they're looking at you to lead the way. That's when you put all of that together, that's when you've achieved greatness. And at no point in this pyramid did I put a number on a bar. It doesn't matter. And like when we do our team meeting tonight, we're gonna do this like breakout of like a vision, mid-level goals, bottom level goals, which are basically like your day-to-day habits and stuff. And it's gonna be just like laying out what greatness means to each individual. It's going to be different. And of course, there's gonna be societal pieces that you want in there. Like I wanna qualify for nationals, win nationals, compete at worlds, like whatever that big goal is. Greatness is not, so let's say you have this goal to compete at a world championship, but you never get there. But you put forth your best effort all of the time, consistently, over years and years, and it never came to fruition. You've achieved greatness because you've done the best that you could with what you were given. And that's what this is about. Because at the end of the day, this is an amateur sport that even if you want to compete at the world level, you gotta fucking pay a lot of money to do it. But what you can get back from that is developing these skills that make you great at your job, that make you great to your friends, to your teammates, as a husband, as a wife, as a mother, as a father. Greatness is a lifestyle. It's not just something that's done on the platform. And it's realized behind the scenes, doing the hard work. One of my favorite Tom Brady quotes was, "The best gift of the hard work is the hard work." And I think that's so true, that like when you put in that work and you do all of these pieces to really make yourself great, like it is really rewarding to be able to walk around knowing that you gave your all at something for a long period of time and you've achieved the best that you can possibly achieve. And there is nothing to be upset about under those circumstances. Win or lose, most people won't even earn the right to be defeated under those circumstances. Most people will convince themselves that they're incapable of doing something long before they ever get to this point, and they never achieve their full greatness. So my goal as a coach, my overreaching vision of this team is to make everybody realize their internal greatness. And everybody's got different parts of this that they need to work on. And this is something that doesn't just all of a sudden you just get mindfulness and you're done. This is something that takes decades to become great at. So it's something that, because you have a student mentality and you throw yourself into this lifelong process of learning, that you can continuously develop these things. And at the end of the day, if you've done all of this, you'll look back and you'll realize that you've achieved some great things along the way, and you've learned some great life lessons. And the thing about like resiliency, mindfulness, they equate to higher quality of life. So it's not just you're gonna feel great because of your effort when you're looking back. It literally equates in the research to a higher quality of life. So you get the ability to participate in a sport, no matter what your skill level is. There's world champions and there's people competing at that first meet, everybody in between. And they all have the ability to be great. And what greatness means to each individual is gonna be, or what's realized out of it is gonna be different for each one. But these are the things that we should strive for. And we get into this, especially with a sport like this. It becomes so program and data driven that we lose sight of what it actually takes for the human being to accomplish that. And like, I've changed the programs for our team more than half a dozen times. The same people saw results every time. And it made me really think about, no matter what team I played on, like for soccer, we had different offenses, defenses, I played different positions. It didn't matter. You learn those nuances. And you know, most programs, if they've shown to be successful for a few years and they've got consistent success, it's not the program. It's what you're bringing to the program that needs to be developed. Your individual process of achieving this greatness. But we get into this, it's all about the program and the data, and when we pass that on as coaches, it's selfish of us to think that we're responsible for that person's results. Don't get me wrong, I do think that there are better ways to be coaching. So when I write programs, I literally put failure in their programs because I stress them beyond their skill set, right? I don't literally put a weight on the bar that they can't lift and then they go to lift it and they miss. I leave it open-ended. I make them have to make decisions. Failure doesn't always mean physical failure. So in a lot of cases, so in week 1, they're told to leave 5 to 10 pounds on the barbell. And then week 2, we do reps and work on something. And week 3, we try to beat what we hit in week 1. And there are times where lifters will literally put too much on the bar week 1. And it'll be like an RPE 10, like a true max. That's a learning situation. That's a mental failure that we learn from. We have a conversation, we learn from it. They learn how to make better decisions. And when you do things well, so when you follow all of these pieces, our programs are set up to reward you. So in week 3, if you've made good decisions week 1, you worked on the technique stuff you need to work on week 2, you challenge your skill level week 3, you're rewarded when you do things well. So even just like taking, and it's obviously not this simple, but even just breaking it down like that. So you need to be aware of the current situation. You need to know it's week 1. You need to do this judgment free because you may have hit more in the past. You may hit a PR on this lift and there's still 5 to 10 pounds there. In both situations, you need to control your emotions. You can't get too low and you can't get too high. You gotta be judgment free so that you don't put more weight on the bar, so that you make the good decision. You know what to do next and you're in the moment, getting the most out of the moment. But if you do make a mistake, right, on week 1, so like the example I put with the RPE 10, you need to have the resiliency to be able to handle that adversity and learn from it. You need to have the student mindset, understanding that that mistake is a learning opportunity and get better from it. If you just get pissed off and you're just like, well, I didn't sleep a lot last night, this program's too intense, I'm not recovering, like whatever it may be, if you're not accountable for those actions, you won't learn from that mistake. And that requires you to be honest with yourself, right? And the effort's there, it's built into the program because I'm making you challenge your skills. So then in week 2, after we do our week 1, where the 5 to 10 pounds are left on the bar, let's say you made a good decision week 1, you utilized all the baseline pieces of the pyramid. Then week 2, you get sets and reps at a certain percentage of that max effort. We're working on our work capacity. They get clear goals of the technique, which if they bring those clear goals into training, they have clear intent of what they're supposed to be doing behind every single repetition, which I do remind them about. And they're still working on their mindfulness and their baseline focus. So being able to pull themselves back in when that mind starts wandering. And they do all of that well. Then week 3, they get to challenge their skill in the lift. If they made a good decision week 1 and they paid attention during their reps and they had good intent, confidence begins to emerge in this block. They know that they can hit that 5-pound PR on that variation. So they challenge their skill, confidence emerges, and you start to see better focus because they know this is the 3rd week in a row, they know what they need to do here. So even though these take a long time to develop, our programs are literally, this is how much I've thought about the way that we do things, is they literally follow this pyramid in how that they're rated. And then week 4, I give them a easier week where it's comp lifts usually at 80%, so that I can kind of assess and do my job and let them recover, because those physiological aspects still matter. And as a coach, my decision making for exercise selection, volumes, all of that stuff is important, and there's a reason why we need to recover. But our programs are literally set up, and so now if you stack everything together, right, where we do it month after month, year after year, we're constantly working on these things. We're constantly working our way up this ladder of greatness. Every single block we're doing this. And as a meet gets closer, we do more max effort lifts. So it's less rotating. And what we're doing there, we're working on sport-specific skill. We're getting confidence, and we're developing better focus under heavier weights, under competition settings. So having that constant max effort stuff, we're challenging our skill, our sport specific skill. You just, by doing more heavier singles, you just get more confident doing heavier singles. People end up having more fun at meets because they're not pissing their pants scared of lifting a heavier weight. So literally everything that I do in our programs is based off of this pyramid here, but it's up to each individual to work on each individual piece of these. And they need to be honest with themselves, and they actually need to be able to, another part of integrity, being honest with yourself, it's understanding where your weaknesses truly lie within this process. I'll break out each of these in separate videos. Maybe we'll go in more depth with like 1, 2, 3, like it kind of depends, I guess, on which one it is and how much I want to talk about it. But for now, that kind of gives a breakdown. I've posted a picture of the pyramid on Instagram. It's in my highlights.
Rachel did a good job at it.
Rachel actually put it together. She did a good job. And it looks great. And when you actually see it, you can see how it flows, how one just kind of, like I said, like the bottom 2 layers are things we train. And if we do well at that, we see the other stuff emerge. And it works the other way too, right? So if we're not doing well training these first 2 layers, we don't see that skill, confidence, and focus emerge. We see the exact opposite. We'll see more frustration kick in. We'll see doubt start to kick in the lifters. So it allows us, when we start seeing those things emerge, we know something underneath here needs to be addressed in training. But these are the things we train. These are the things that emerge when we do well. There are rewards at the end of the day. Questions? Are you great?
No.
That's for sure. But if you want to follow along, I'm posting more. So one of the things that I think, and as a coach, I've said a lot of these things in the past, but there just wasn't an organization and a structure and a clear communication to the thoughts. And at the same time, like with Instagram, I'm posting PRs all the time. So I may be saying one thing to the lifters, but like my Instagram account's saying another thing. So I wasn't communicating well. So one of the things I'm going to start doing more on Instagram, everybody shares like, here's our research on this topic, with little fancy little squares and pictures, and you can scroll through and it's like, yeah, I agree with that. Infographics, that's the word I was looking for. And everybody shows people hitting PRs and stuff. So one of the things I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start showing what the process of training actually looks like. So it probably won't get as many likes as the other things, but I really don't give a fuck. At least it's different. Like my feed's all the same crap. So you can follow along with that, or don't, because I don't give a fuck. With KW Can, which is my personal page. Precision Powerlifting Systems, which is our team page. And you can follow along and see some bathroom selfies of Jay Birdie. Some lifting videos occasionally, and she's actually been doing more self-reflection videos on her Instagram account. She'll be doing one a little bit later today, but she did one on sleep. You can follow along with that at Jay Birdie. Burdie, not to be confused with BIRD.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's it. You want to stop it?
Yeah.